Right, good morning everybody, and welcome to our meeting of the Chief Executive's Employment Committee. And we welcome Her Worship, who is joining us by Zoom, and we also welcome any members of the public who are joining us by Zoom or will view at a later date, because our meeting is being recorded. So Councillor Campbell is just walking into the room, so we'll just give them 2 seconds. Morning, Councillor Campbell. And Councillor Casey has just apologised for a few minutes. He's just getting something to enable him to operate at the meeting. So he'll be back in a few minutes. So we'll run through, we don't have any apologies apart from Councillor Casey. Do we need to move that? I suppose we should. Councillor Marsh, Councillor Chitona, moved in second. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? Any budding chief executives amongst us? Not being flippant, Mr. Chairman. Those notification of late items.
No late items.
Chief Executive. And officer reports. We move to our main business for the day. First is the appointment of the Deputy Chairperson. And we have, I guess there's 2 recommendations that we need to get to, but do we wish to have an introduction from either Ellie or Shane?
I'm happy to introduce this, and Ellie, who will be to add as required. As this is the first meeting of the Chief Executive's Employment Committee for the triennium, one of the tasks in front of the committee is appointment of a Deputy Chair. And you'll see in the paper, consistent with the rules by which we operate the council, there are alternative systems for voting in order to determine candidates if the council wishes. So if there is more than one person nominated, council needs to choose whether it goes through a system A or a system B process. And you'll note the statutory requirements there and the delegations, and you have the delegations to appoint your chair. Happy to take any questions.
Right, just checking, Your Worship, can you hear us and can we hear you?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Right, well, the first thing is to decide which system of voting we use. Has been a recommendation to use B, but we're welcome to use A if we prefer. Is there any discussion? If not, would someone like to move that we run with one of the systems?
I'm happy to do that. That the Chief Executive's Employment Committee uses System B of Clause 25 of Schedule 7 of the Local Government Act 2002 for the election of its Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you, Councillor Short. Is there a seconder? Councillor Humphrey. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Raise your hand in case of Zoom attendees. To the contrary, the motion is carried. Thank you. We'll be using System B. So that means we move on to the nominations for the position as Deputy Chairperson of the Chief Executive's Employment Committee. Do we have any nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recommend Councillor Grant Hadfield for the position of Deputy Chair. I see his business background and his experience would be valuable and add support to the role of Chairman for this committee.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Velsky. Do we have any other nominations? Councillor Short.
I haven't asked him, but I was considering nominating Phil. I also put with his business background.
Right, so do we take that as a nomination, or do you want to ask?
Oh, would you accept the nomination?
Right. Right, is there a seconder for the nomination of Councillor Marsh, Councillor G Taylor? Any further nominations? We've just to update you, we've decided to use system B for the voting of the chairperson, and at this point we have two nominations, and that's where we're at the moment. Councillor Hatfield and Councillor Marsh have been nominated, and I'm now just asking, are there any further nominations? That being the case, we have two nominations, and we need to vote. By hand, raised hand. First of all, those wishing to vote for Councillor Hatfield, please raise your right hand.
I vote for myself.
You're most welcome to vote for yourself. Thank you. And those wishing to vote for Councillor Marsh. Right, so can we just perhaps have those again? Just it's close. So, right, so we'll start again. Those in favour, those wishing to vote for Councillor Hatfield, please raise your hand. And for Councillor Marsh. Okay, thank you. The clear Councillor Hatfield duly elected to the position of Deputy Chairperson of this committee.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I've noted we've had a 5-5 tie. System B means we go to drawing lots, which
Never run a raffle on the board.
yeah, it was 6-4.
I didn't vote.
Michael didn't vote.
So, not needing to. Right, thank you, councillors. We move on to, I guess, the main business of today, and that is the Chief Executive's Key Performance Indicators Review. And that we have had a report circulated, and we'll now ask our Chief Executive, Dr. Richard Templer, to take us through the report and elaborate, and I guess I'd be open for questions and clarification from councillors.
Good morning, everyone. This particular report has had about 3 different versions as things were delayed during COVID-19. So I'll kick off by saying there is a disparity between the executive summary and the conclusion in terms of the KPI results. The conclusion is correct in that of the 17 KPIs, 6 have been achieved, 8 are on track, and 3 are not achievable. I propose to basically go through the KPIs and provide a brief comment and take questions kind of on each block, and happy to answer any questions as we go. So first up with health and safety, 2 KPIs, NBC health and safety strategy approved, and council will be aware that we've approved that strategy, and 0 reportable accidents, and it is on track as we've had no reportable accidents to date. Taking questions here.
Questions on health and safety?
Key projects, 3 key projects were customer service, performance improvement, and financial management. So customer service complaints reduced year. That is on track. We've had 9 complaints to date, 14 in 2018-19. The key council areas for improvement, including efficiencies and savings identified and agreed by the Executive Team Council. That is, the subsequent paper outlines our basically improvement plan. Council operates to or below its operating budget, and planned capital expenditure is within +5 or -15% of budget. OPEX is now not achievable. That is primarily due to the COVID-19 disruption, but also the impact of depreciation, and which you'll be familiar with through our financial reporting. And CapEx is not achievable. This is in part due to the COVID-19 disruption. For example, that is the skate park, which had COVID-19 not have occurred, I suspect would have been completed by now, given the outstanding progress. But also we've had a delay of 2 significant infrastructure projects in terms of Turners Road and Resource Recovery Centre. Happy to take any questions on those. You'll be familiar with those in terms of the key project status report.
In terms of the separate paper, we'll come to that at the end.
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll leave that. Any other questions or clarification?
People and culture, organisational culture, asked your team result above 71%. That's achieved with 72%. And Francis briefed the audit and risk team about the details of that result. It was an extremely pleasing result because, as you'd imagine, each time you go through this process, expectations of performance from the staff increase. So to keep moving it upwards is very positive. Professional development plan for all elected members complete. That's been achieved. It was delivered to you on the 6th of March 2020 by the GM People and Culture. Recruitment at 2.0, complete refresh of MD's attraction, selection and pre-onboarding approach. So we do have a new recruitment process running on Jarvis. That's our intranet. However, we're not doing a complete refresh of recruitment. There's 2 key reasons for that. One is our people and culture team has been incredibly focused on the welfare response around COVID-19, so that's been the focus of their activities, and that will be an ongoing response as the welfare transitions into recovery, in particular in the social recovery space. And secondly, of course, due to COVID-19, our employment environment has changed significantly. Whereas previously we would have had roles where we struggled to get any candidates to apply, let alone any suitable candidates, we are now getting people actually approaching us to see if we have roles available. That's most profound example of that would be in our resource consent planning, where we have really struggled to recruit because of a lack of suitable candidates or any candidates. We're running recruitment at the moment, and we've had 3 very good candidates apply. And that would be the first time in years that we've been in a situation where we have more high quality applicants than vacancies. So it's quite dramatic, the change in the employment environment in the last 2 months.
I just ask, so we've got the example in the planning area. Is that really across the board, across the council business, or is it just?
We're seeing it in basically all the vacancies we have out in the borough at the moment, more applicants and a high quality.
Councillor Corrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the building consent part, we will have any issues in the future with a delay in consents because of the applicants to fill those appointments.
Building consent is different from the planning consent. So one is the resource consent, one is the building consent. So what I was talking about was the resource consenting team. Our building consent consenting team is still a challenge in that space. That's a service we source from Palmerston North City Council, and we are looking to try and get more staff from PNCC to try and speed up that process. We have a new building officer starting next week, so that is increase in numbers there, so that's a good start. But we've been delayed because of health and family commitments of some of our building consent staff, and our most senior building consent technician suffered a serious accident at home. So we're seeing if we can get replacements from PNCC for him.
But thank you for those answers. But the principle is that if there is an influx of suitable candidates for those sort of appointments, we shouldn't have any problems in the future. In fact, building consent officers.
We would hope not, but because we don't do the recruitment, we don't have the same level of control.
Questions? Councillor Shaw.
I just wanted to comment on the organisational culture as your team result, which this year was 72%. And what is the local government average?
I'll ask Francis to answer that question.
We're 8% above the government benchmark. So we could make that 64%.
Thank you.
So obviously the recruitment has been a major challenge for this council for some time, and it has affected the timing, as Councillor Corrie has touched on, with building consents, resource consents. So this could be a big improvement for us, not just in recruitment, it flows right through.
Yes, absolutely.
Our workflows, and which will affect our customer service as well. So.
Yeah, it's good news. Okay, I'll jump to infrastructure. First up is the asset management plans. Road robust and integrated asset management plans complete extended review. That is on track. The investment logic meeting is completed in the time agreed, and basically the draft asset management plans are being developed at the moment and are close to completion in both cases. So that's good news. Three key projects there. Turners Road, the Resource Recovery Centre and new reservoir delivered to plan. The new reservoir has been delivered to plan. Turners Road has been delayed because of an issue in securing the land to actually build the road due to the bereavement, the death of one of the landowners that essentially has delayed the process and made it somewhat more complex. And the Resource Recovery Centre, as Council will remember, the approval for that was built to a budget. The initial design proposal exceeded the budget, so the centre has been redesigned to fit within the budget and will commence construction later this year. And then the third is to focus on drinking water, which was complying with the New Zealand Drinking Water Standard and consent conditions within the known limitations of water and wastewater treatment plants, ensuring no risk to public health and environmental harm. We have had one technical non-compliance but no public health risks. As Council will be aware, some aspects of our water treatment system will be pinged for technical non-compliance because of the way it operates, but there are no public health risks around the water system. And we've had probably an exceptional year in terms of compliance around the wastewater treatment. The reason for that is because of the prolonged dry. This meant we've been able to irrigate to land our wastewater for 6 months.
Questions on infrastructure, Councillor Corrie and Councillor Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to point out that during this long, prolonged dry period that we've had, building hasn't suffered as in the past through a lack of water. So, you know, tastings of the cooking, tasting whatever, but yeah, when we have infrastructure, there are no water restrictions whatsoever over a very long that's a good sign. Well done.
But I think that that is an example of, I think, the foresight this council has shown in that we invest in infrastructure in advance of droughts, in advance of major environmental issues. So we've had the water strategy in place for a number of years that has seen increased use of basically sourcing water from deep aquifers rather than from our river take. And you know that our ultimate strategy is to source all the water for fielding from deep aquifers. Basically, the construction of the new water storage reservoir, and then the as council recently approved, the earthquake strengthening of the second reservoir. This is all about improving the resilience and performance of our water system and doing it in advance so that we can survive in droughts, so that we can deal with natural disasters and natural hazards. So I think this is something this council has done very well in both wastewater and water is actually invested in advance. It's very pleasing.
Councillor Casey and Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through the Chief Executive, I think it's probably worth noting to public watching, people will see non-compliance but not see technical before that. Technical non-compliance could be as simple as a power cut to a monitoring system. Is that the case in this, or is it something else? And I'm pleased or conscious, I don't want to delve too much into infrastructure.
I'll ask the GM infrastructure, Hamish Ward, to answer that.
Oh, thank you, boss. I guess the key non-compliance area with drinking water system is in relation to Halcombe and our inability to treat to achieve the protozoa compliance standard, which is we simply don't have the cap there to treat it. That's a function that you'll see come through into the next long-term plan. Will be a capital investment to address exactly that, as we've done previously with Sanson, where we had ongoing non-compliances there, and the investment, including central government money, including council money, to upgrade that.
I think it's important that it's here.
Yep.
Councillor Wilson.
I just want to endorse Andrew's words on the infrastructure team foreseeing water as a huge advantage for our district, for our town. Industrial, it's opened the door for a lot of industries to come in, especially down Timmins Road. With a lot of them can use a lot of water, and I believe there's some come here from Palmerston or have looked at Palmerston but ended up coming here because of our water surety. So I want to compliment the team on their foresight and infrastructure in managing that, and but also just our halls. I think a simple thing for our hall in the future is just a filter system where they drink the water. A lot of the water is used for the toilets and things, and I think a management around our halls could be quite simple and quite cost effective in the future. So yeah, so I think we're in a real good place with our water, considering our neighbours. Thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on infrastructure, particularly in the area of growth. I know many of our ratepayers feel that fielding has very high rates, but when you think of all the work that we're achieving with the growth of our town, especially in the northwest corner there, all the infrastructure that's happening and the planning that is going into that. COVID-19 has come along just at the wrong time because it's been a perfect construction season and everything's had to go on hold. But I did just want to ask who does the peer reviewing of our asset management plans?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the last time we had our asset management plans rewritten was in advance of the 2018-28 LTP. We actually engaged Audit New Zealand about 6 to 8 months in advance of the formal audit. So they came in and did an audit of those asset management plans, and that was a deliberate move, given they'll be the ones who are assessing it later on. Prior to that, we've had other independent engineering firms that have had various involvement with MWH going back. Had a level of involvement too in some of the asset data in the earlier days. So Audit New Zealand is the most recent one. In addition to that, EZTA also have an audit review of the roading asset management plan, which is part of their investment process as well. And they've been involved to date with this one. But I think given the status, or given where the asset management plans were at previously, which was regarded by audit as a very good place, we haven't at this point in time sought any external audit for this next lot. Whether we do or not will depend on how the draft and everything comes together over the next couple of 3 months. But I'm not envisaging the need for an external audit of the plan.
So it's a voluntary process, it's not legislatively required.
It's audited by Audit New Zealand at the time of auditing the long-term plan. We don't need to have it done in advance of that if we've got confidence in ourselves, which we now have. So.
Just in terms of Turners Road, just like to sort of keep the pressure on, acknowledge the hiccup, and the landowner who died did die 8 months and 27 days ago. So we just need to decide on plans B and C and D, etc. if need be, but I know that that's in hand. Thank you.
Community and strategy, council building refit and strengthening project, indicative project costings complete. Positive communication approach with other project. This is put together under Project SAM. Council have seen the indicative costings. We had a reminder earlier this week of the importance of earthquake strengthening with the earthquakes to the north and west of Levin. And so in case of this building, we are required by law to earthquake strengthen it to bring at least a significant proportion of it up to IL4, which is a very high level of earthquake strengthening, because this is the civil defence response point for the district. And as the recent COVID-19 response has illustrated, it is exceptionally useful to have this building available when you have a prolonged emergency event. And then secondly, we also need to earthquake strengthen the public library. Council has approved the final location, scope and cost of the library building project. So that has been done. And thank you, Council for that. Again, the recent earthquakes also highlighted the need to earthquake strengthen the library. We actually closed the library briefly to do a seismic inspection, which showed no damage but some movement of some of the key structural members in the library. So that's going to be a focus going into the 10-year plan. And the third district plan review has progressed in line with council approved project plan budget timeframe. That's on track. Obviously, precinct 4, which was a major plan change, has been approved. And I have to say, from my perspective, the progress that Matthew and Andrea have made on the district plan has been really pleasing. I think that was an outstanding example of very good recruitment by GM Community and Strategy, and it's really paid dividends. Very pleased.
Right, I'll open that up to questions on community and strategy.
Just a comment, really. I am very concerned with precinct 4 if Horizons defer or postpone the delegation of the land for the Reeves Line Spillway, as has been suggested, and I know that we've made a very strong submission on that, but I don't know how that will affect us if they put that in place as to how we can progress in the area. It is a concern, and just to please keep an eye on it.
Yeah, no, I certainly share your concerns. In theory, horizons, as water levels rise in the Makito stream, horizons, as they're coming up, need to monitor that and make a determination as to whether they should open the red line spillway. They're required to inform the landowner so they can get any stock off the land, and then they, if need be, will flood across the land. The big advantage in making it into a permanent spillway is that then they don't need to consult with the landowner, and they don't need to go through this complex process of trying to estimate what the peak flow of the stream will be, and whether or not that is at a 1 in 20 year event. In practice, Horizon has been pretty good since the building of the Red Line Spillway in terms of activating it. Particularly now, there is the basically large bits of railway iron protecting it from logs jamming under the gate. So I think in terms of emergency flood management, we still have a reasonable degree of safety. It's just the operation of it is more complex than it would be if there's the spillway. The spillway, essentially life for Horizons becomes a lot easier because they've got a designated piece of land that actually won't have livestock on it, and so they can spill water.
In relation to district planning, I'm impressed with the way the staff are approaching the ongoing work, and it just strikes me as being a really nice mix of academic, legislative and practical approach to our district, right throughout the rural lifestyle and the villages and now into fielding. You know, they're very cognizant of the practical issues affecting our community, as well as all the other things that would have to be taken into account. So, yeah, long may that continue. It seems to be going well.
Thank you. Into corporate and regulatory, first up was the election and induction. Obviously of key importance to councillors. I would really like to acknowledge Ellie and her team and Shane in that. I think the election ran very smoothly. We generated a reasonable amount of publicity around the election, so thank you to elected members for doing that, because that does help our turnout. If a little bit of controversy is actually quite useful, so that's good. We're very grateful actually for some good coverage by staff and others in the local election. It does really help. So the council has been established and inducted. We went through the induction process, and I think that's been achieved very successfully. Digital strategy advanced with Office 365 rollout and online resource compliance compliance complete. I'll be presenting the digital strategy to you on the 18th of June council meeting. That's a bit delayed because during the COVID disruption, Mel, Brian and I, who are working on it, were busy doing other things. The Office 365 pilot is underway, and in fact, quite a significant number of our council laptops are running Office 365 quite successfully. It's proved to be, at least from a user point of view, a reasonably painless transition. When we get to a full rollout, we'll be able to start using some of the more advanced features of 365. And we now have online resource consenting, which proved to be extremely popular during the lockdown period when we got an unprecedented number of resource consents come in, some of which are for very large developments. So that's actually an increasing force. So that's really exciting in terms of looking forward. And then last item there, earthquake-prone legislation is implemented. The priority areas have been approved by council, building owners informed, and we have an earthquake-prone building specialist consultancy engaged. And so this has allowed us to basically notify all building owners in the priority areas of the fact that they may have an earthquake-prone building. And we have a specialist resource who, if there's any debate over whether a building is earthquake-prone or not, can provide us with an expert opinion. So there's basically two sorts of seismic assessments. There's basically a simple seismic assessment and a detailed seismic assessment, and then those forms come into us. That is, if anyone challenges them. We have recently received some of those for some of the buildings we identified as earthquake prone, and they've confirmed our assessment that the buildings were in fact earthquake prone. Earthquake prone being 33% or less of new building strength. And so that's been very pleasing in terms of our assessment matching up with a full engineering consultancy assessment. So happy to take questions on either of those.
Councillor Shaw.
On the earthquake prone buildings, as a governance team, I've been quite surprised by what I would consider lack of engagement by building owners, considering how many buildings are being affected. But possibly the operational team are getting more contact than what we are. You know, if there's been much engagement from building owners with staff.
So we've obviously notified all the building owners of owners of the buildings that are potentially earthquake prone, and we have had some responses. To date, we haven't had anyone disagree with us and anyone challenge our assessment. I think at the moment we've had two things in play. One, building owners are busy working out what they should do. And then secondly, with the impact of COVID-19, building owners are probably having some quite interesting conversations with their tenants, which has probably pushed the earthquake prone matter into the, put it off the table for the moment. I think the challenging bit is the impact of COVID-19 has made retail more challenging, and so for our retail tenants and our retail building owners, the earthquake prone building, do you strengthen, do you demolish, do you rebuild, calculations have probably got more challenging.
Questions, Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you. Richard, I'd just like to congratulate you on when we look through at the number of KPIs that have been achieved or are on track to date. I think it's really important to acknowledge, particularly in light of what's been a year of significant disruption to date. My questions for you, I should just say that exclude COVID-19 as the answer.
Yep.
I would like to know what has been the biggest frustration for you this year as a chief executive, and to date, what your personal biggest thing in the role has been.
The biggest frustration is it's really I can't say I've had a lot of frustration, but if I'm being honest, the thing that frustrates me the most in local government space is when central government introduces legislation or changes the rule to fix something it perceives as a problem in local government, but doesn't give that fix to local government. So if you look at the creation of a housing urban authority, that creates a separate entity that has special powers under resource consenting and building consenting, that sort of thing. But government doesn't give those powers to local government. If you look at the proposal that put forward for streamlining the Resource Management Act, government creates something which gives itself special powers to circumvent the Resource Management Act so it can achieve things faster, but doesn't give those powers to local government. So I get most frustrated when essentially they've identified the problem, but they're not sharing the fix with us. Another really, and a similar example of that would be the recent changes to the building consenting, which allows basically requires no consent for structures under 30 square metres. There was an enormous amount of feedback from the sector to government, all of which was ignored. Because one of the obvious questions is, you build a sleep out, right? 30 square metres, fantastic. No building consent. Then you build another one, and you connect it with a veranda, which is also less than 30 square metres. So effectively, and you connect that to a house, or suddenly you've got 2 sleep outs. My concern is that at some point, I don't know, 3 or 4 years down the track, this will have turned into a real problem. And it'll be up to, and it'll be our enforcement team running around saying to people, that 30 square metre house extension you built, which happens to be wired and plumbed, technically you need a building consent to do that. It won't happen. And it won't meet fire safety requirements, and it won't meet sanitary requirements. And that sort of thing. So that's my biggest frustration. But a good question to think about. Biggest learning would be for me, and this is because I'm 4 years into local government, is how each council I've worked with has had, even though there aren't necessarily huge changes in people, the councils have quite distinct behaviours. So this current council does not necessarily behave the same way as the previous council, even though there's quite a lot of common people, and of course was quite different from the council before that. And so that's been a really interesting thing.
Good. Great questions. Right, other questions of our chief executive?
So what are the challenges for the future, especially the economic recovery from COVID-19? What do you see as possibly the unexpected challenges ahead that we wouldn't have seen 6 months ago?
I actually think council faces a really challenging time, and what it faces is what a lot of, we've been very fortunate in that we've been able to achieve the 0 average rate rise without having to cut council services, and that's a combination of I think bit of good luck, but also some really good planning. The fact that we had a resilience fund we could draw on has made a huge difference. Going into our 10-year plan, we face collectively a really challenging problem, which is one of the key things we know from past recessions is that it is really important for public bodies like councils to keep investing, because that channels money into the economy, it stimulates growth. So whether it's horizontal or vertical construction, it's really important. It's to keep levels of service high, it's to keep people employed. And if council is going to meet the challenges of the future with things like social housing, climate change, earthquake-prone buildings, town centre refreshes, better, a better sense of well-being for our community, better social connectedness, better cultural connectedness. All those things are critically important, but require significant spending from council. At the same time, we'll be operating in an economy in which will be depressed. There will be less money around and there will be less people employed. So the challenge for council is, how do you achieve the things you want to achieve without But how do you do that without having to dramatically increase rates? And so this is going to be the challenge going forward. If we want better services and to improved well-being for our community, it typically means we've got to spend more money, in particular invest more money. So how do we balance that against the desire to not have dramatic rate increases? And there's the challenge is there are no easy answers. These are hard decisions because it is, you know, one of the things the council has indicated in the past is they wish to reduce the level of debt, they wish to rebuild the resilience fund. So if you're building new infrastructure and paying down debt and building a resilience fund, very, very difficult to do that unless you are increasing rates. And so it's, you know, there are no easy answers, there are no easy decisions. And I think as a council and as a community, we've got to grapple with that. And even as a whole society. I mean, we'll all be aware the government is investing billions of dollars into the economy to keep people employed through wage subsidy and significantly increased government spending, both on big infrastructure projects and a whole range of other things. But ultimately, that's got to be paid back. And government has the advantage that it has more revenue mechanisms than a council, but ultimately it's a similar sort of thing. So yeah.
And if you throw a general election inside that as well.
Well, and both at a local and at a central level, you have the difficult balance between making hard decisions, which is what council and central government need to do, and being popular, which is what you need to do to get re-elected. So, yeah, that's the challenge going forward.
That's the challenge for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah. And the good thing is, and this is something I think this council should be very proud of, is this council has consistently shown a willingness to work on these problems collectively. Not as, you know, individual groups within council or even as a council and staff. We all work on these problems. We accept these problems are hard. We all come together and work on them. You know, I look at some of the divisions and other councils around what they should do around rates and that sort of thing. And it's extremely pleasing to me to know that this council has been very consistent in reaching a collective agreement with the support of staff on what position we should take on rates. And so I think that's a real strength. We're all in this together. We all want the best for our community. And so that's how you get through hard problems.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? We've got a recommendation on page 4, which we'll treat the improvement plan separately, I think. Sorry, page 8. Basically, the recommendation has been open report. Someone like to move that?
Chair,
Councillor Sheffield.
that the Chief Executive's Employment Committee, that's a report.
Is there a second, please? Councillor Marsh. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Raise your hand if you're on Zoom. The contrary, carry.
Mr. Chairman, could we ask the mayor if she'd like to comment?
Your Worship, you've been asked, would you like to comment?
Thank you. Thank you for that opportunity. Yeah, I just want to add my thanks to everybody, to Richard and the management team. It has been particularly challenging, not only with the big projects that we've had over the last 6-12 months, but obviously with the COVID and also with the drought hitting our rural community. I think that's added extra pressures to everybody. And I fully agree with Richard's comments about we've done this as a team, and I think that is the key to the success of this council, is that we do, while we recognise our roles in council, governance versus operational, we do work incredibly well together, and we use the expertise and knowledge just to brainstorm and to share to come up with a solution. So I thank you, Richard, and your team for that work, and for everyone else that has helped build what we have today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll move on to page 12, which is the Manawatu District Council Improvement Plan, and we'll ask the Chief Executive to introduce that to us. We have had it circulated, but it is new to us.
So thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. So as you'll be aware, one of my key performance indicators was identification for areas of improvement, according efficiencies and savings identified and agreed by the executive team and council. We had, in thinking about this KPI, anticipated that the council mark process would be extremely useful in terms of delivering this. Ultimately, it didn't meet our expectations. And that, I know that it was just a 12-page report. And so as an executive team, we got together and said, okay, what are the areas we think we should be looking at? What are the things we should be doing? So there were some things identified in the council mark report. We also had feedback from the Ask Your Team employee survey, and we did a review of the business as an executive team and identified areas for improvement. And so I formed those into the improvement plan, which you can see on page 15. Now, the intention of this is very much that it be not a static, but an active document. So there'll be things that come on and drop off and that sort of thing. And as things are achieved, they'll roll off. And so I've sorted these by area, the improvements identified, and then the source, and the person who's responsible. And I'll just run through them one by one and make commentary. So the first one was annual report to demonstrate progress towards achievement of desired community outcomes. So this was a specific improvement suggestion from Council Mark. So that will be added to this year's annual report. So that hasn't commenced because we haven't started writing the report yet. MWLAS.
Can I just suggest that if you want to ask questions as we go through, perhaps just raise your hand. Otherwise, Richard will just carry on. If you raise your hand, we'll stop for a question.
So the NWLAS Council Act. So the Manawatu Wanganui Local Authority Shared Service Group is basically where all the councils, with the exception of Palmerston North and the Horizons region, get together and look at shared services. One of the initiatives we do is we have a leadership development program through that, which is run by our GM People and Culture and Michael Hawker. And we have teams of people from different councils come together and look at initiatives. And one of the teams is basically looking at a council app to basically increase engagement and community involvement with council. And that was reviewed by the app board. They presented to them and receives very strong report. So, and as one of the councils involved, we think that's a good idea. That, of course, has been on hold because the project group working on it have not been able to make any progress, predominantly because their roles in the COVID-19 response. So we're now basically hoping they'll be able to pick that up. But the aim is to basically have an app that people can download, which will allow them, A, to respond to questions from councils, but also to make suggestions, point out issues, that sort of thing. Financial, from Council Mark, elected members have a broader understanding of the council's finances. And that is active, it means it's an ongoing process. So there's been presentations from Shane and Amanda as part of the annual plan and 10-year process. And one of the things we will be looking to do with council in the next financial year is have quite a detailed discussion with you in terms of the financial strategy, because that's one of the key components of the 10-year plan. And that, when I talked about balancing the hard problems, that financial strategy is one of the ways in which we try and do that.
Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you. Richard, I just wanted to ask, the improvement or the outcome sorts that, elected members have a broader understanding of the council's finances, and in terms of actions, talked about presentations, et cetera, and activity, but how are you going to measure that? How will you know that you've sought to improve, when we look at all these improvements, how will you know you've achieved success?
I think, and one of the ways of achieving something like this will be, one of the things we're keen to do is actually survey the elected members and get their feedback. And this is as part of our professional development program around elected members. So to get a sense from you, do you feel better equipped in a financial sense in that way? Because I think that's the best way of actually measuring it. It would be very difficult to try and objectively do it without giving you all an exam of the council finances. Though it might be fun.
We were just discussing
Perhaps a Kahoot.
If I may, although it's jumping ahead, given that you've touched on surveying the members, just flagging up really a comment to make in terms of the timeframes around the evaluation system when we come to that.
Also from Councillor Mark, better testing about your assumptions and greater focus on strategic risk for the 10-year plan. And so this has been a specific focus of the presentations by our economist and policy analyst, Stacey and Lisa. The council will have seen these workshops around the 10-year plan, and you'll see more of these. In particular, as council will be aware, we do assumptions and risks for our 10-year plan. Internally, we've been working through what the implications of those of COVID-19 are on those, and so you'll see a revised, we will have a workshop with council where we'll go through all those assumptions and what we think the impact of COVID-19 is. And that's something we'll be updating as we go, because a classic example is one of the risks council faces is, are our population forecasts correct? We're currently forecasting reasonably significant growth for the district. And one of the questions is, what does the impact of COVID-19, what is the impact on COVID-19 going to be? And at the moment, the answer is nobody's really sure. We could make a reasonable case to say population increase. We may see more population increase, because as a result of COVID-19, this region's economy may be stronger than others, so people will leave here seeking work, and people may also choose to move here for lifestyle reasons. Because if you've been locked down in an apartment in Auckland, you're probably thinking maybe it would be much nicer to be on a decent sized section in a house in a place like that.
If I may, just through the chair, it could be simple as we've got water and we now have a bus. So
yeah.
Public transport and water, some of our major centres could have an effect.
The other reason I think we may see an additional increase in population is someone has a job in Wellington, but they've discovered they can do it remotely over the last 2 months. So they move here and they go down 2 days a fortnight or something like that for 10 meetings. Yeah. I'm talking with a colleague who's working in government, and one of his staff is for family reasons is relocating to Northland, and they reached an agreement that she would stay employed because actually she can do her job remotely. They've definitively proved that over the last 2 months, and they just negotiated on when she would come into the office, how many days a month or whatever. Yeah, so I think that'll have a big effect. Quarterly reporting should be reviewed, Councillor Mark recommendation. So you will be aware that our CFO has updated all our quarterly reporting, now giving some more detailed financial information. So that's been achieved, but it's also something we're always looking for feedback from.
Councillor Casey.
Yeah, and thank you. Happy to provide some feedback. As a new member to Audit Risk and receiving reports, can I just say they're so much easier to read compared to the other ones. I've found it much more, the flow of information far better and easier to read. So I just want to pass on that comment. Essentially, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, to me, obviously.
I'd have to say quite a lot of credit for that has to go to the chair of Audit and Risk, as that Stuart's worked closely with the team around basically some really good suggestions around what he'd see like to present it, and also being willing to us to say, what do you think of this, that sort of thing. So it's been a really positive engagement.
Oh, well done to the chair. Oh, no,
Cool. So in terms of our budgeting, we use a software tool called Magic, and this is being updated. The driver behind this is basically to improve our budgeting tool going into the 10-year plan, and so that's a significant piece of work. And associated with that is basically upskilling our staff on that, and the finance team that have that in place. One of the things we've identified is investigating third-party funding opportunities for council projects. So looking at what can we do beyond that. And this was identified as part of the NWS Emerging Leaders program. It's currently been on hold. But a good example of that is council will be aware that we applied to the Central Energy Trust. We also applied to the New Zealand Lotteries Commission. And it's just looking at, are there other opportunities for us to seek revenue? And also, are there other services council provides that could potentially bring in revenue?
Thank you. I just wanted to maybe get a comment from the Chief Executive regarding third-party funding. I think that the contestable funding will be less and more sought after. Is it a shared opinion, or
yeah, I think some of the entities which provide funding to the not-for-profit sector have already been hammered. A good example of that is the TAB. In that you'll be aware that a significant source of their revenue comes from gambling on sport. With no sport, that revenue has disappeared. The TAB has had to reduce staff, I think, by 30%. And of course, the TAB is a not-for-profit entity, and it returns its money into the community through a variety, basically back into sports and that sort of thing. So they've indicated there's going to be substantially less money. So that is going to put a real squeeze. I don't know whether the Lotteries Commission has seen a revenue hit or not. I assume so.
And adding on to that, being such a low interest environment at the moment, those organisations, you know, they'll still be wanting to hold their reserves. So.
Yeah,
that's right.
So in the financial space, we do a review of the bottom-up budget. So council will be aware that the biggest savings and basically trimming that goes on in council is actually in the development of the budget. So all our budget managers basically look at what needs to be done next year. They go through and identify the projects they'll need to achieve, the resources required for that. And that typically, as in last year, comes in, would require a rate rise of somewhere between 10 and 12%. So then, as the executive team, we pull out our very sharp pencils and go through in this case, hammered it down to 4.6%. Then we had the COVID-19 event, and we reduced it again to zero. So that's the major financial trimming that goes on in the organisation on an annual basis.
Just my only concern is the word complete. I'm very keen to see a process such as that on a continual basis.
Yes.
And thank you to you and your teams for the work that's been done for this, I guess, annual plan. But yeah, I think it's crucially important that we're exploring those avenues on an ongoing basis. So absolutely, maybe we could have that altered somehow.
From
Councillor Humphrey.
Sorry, you go.
No, I was jumping to the next.
Oh, sorry, okay. I just wanted to double check. So you talked in the report about internal efficiencies and savings being found. But you've also just talked about projects that don't get the go ahead. So what I'm interested in, those savings are around 5%. What proportion of that was actually just proposed, new projects or items to add that didn't get added in, and how much of that was actually internal efficiency and saving on existing?
I'd have to go off the top of my head here because I don't have the figures in front of me. I'd say about probably 60% would be projects we didn't proceed with, and about 40% are savings. Most of those savings are typically in the personnel space, where we either don't fill vacancies or look at rejigging things so we can do something with the existing staff where we might have needed to bring an extra person. Essentially, from a council point of view, we have a certain number of fixed overheads, and we're always looking at efficiencies around those, but they're fairly intractable, such as basically the buildings, IT systems, power, all that sort of stuff. And our variable costs can be expressed as people in the project.
Thank you. I did make this comment in an email to Dr. Templer, but probably worth sharing with the wider team, that I think there may be value in actually including the list and itemising those. And and you've just touched on, Mr. Chair, that needs to be a regular review. And I think actually documenting that is actually probably one of those things that is actually a genuine interest to our ratepayers. They're always looking to see where we're sharpening that pencil. And so documenting that information, I think, would be quite valuable.
I concur, Councillor Humphrey, because I think that when we're out there talking to residents, ratepayers in our community, the more information that we have on board, the better we can talk to the concerns that perhaps ratepayers may have, etc. So I think that would be useful. I think that would be useful as well.
Thank you. And I'm happy to do that. Okay, into the governance space, further professional development of the elected members. This was Council Mark feedback, and let's do good work about GM people and culture. That's been rolled out to elected members, so do please take advantage of it. Council vision, strategy and operation plans could be more strongly aligned. So we're reviewing that as part of the 10-year plan, and Council will be aware that we have, as part of the 10-year plan, developed a new vision and a series of strategic outcomes. And so we'll be ensuring that the rest of the 10-year plan fits and is closely aligned with those. Further development of risk reporting. We've talked about that in terms of the focus on the strategic risk under the financial one. That was on hold due to we didn't have any audit risk meetings, but that's now recommenced with the start-up of audit risk. So that's subsequent to this report going into the system is now active. And independent chair of the Audit Risk Commission Committee is good governance practice. That was a recommendation for Council Mark. I'll just include that for completeness, which was rejected. we're very happy with our Chair of Audit and Risk. Evaluation system is in place for elected members, so this is something we will look to start in the next financial year with your support. Accountability focus was one of the key things that came through our Ask Your Team survey. And so this has been workshopped by our wider management team, so basically everyone who has staff responsibilities, and that's been determining what the consequences are and how we implement those for failure to deliver. And so that's in place at a management level. MWLAS Emerging Leaders Program, that has been delayed and now cancelled for this year for COVID-19, but it'll kick off again next year. And that's just, that was a recommendation made by Michael and Francis to MWLAS because of the disruption from COVID-19. It just wasn't practical to get people together. And a lot of the exercises we have the participants doing involve group work and close contact. So,
Councillor Shaw.
not an option under level 3.
While it was operating, how many staff have we put forward into the Young Leaders Program, and also were you mentoring anyone while it was still operating?
So I'll ask Francis to answer the first question and then I'll ask the second.
So the overall, the programs have roughly 12 participants between years 1 and 2.
From memory too.
No, overall. So we usually get between 2 and 3. A couple of years ago, we had a big tranche go through, about 5 in 1 year. And then the numbers tend to drop down for each year. So we can really get 1 and 2 in each year in the last couple of years. This year, we were overwhelmed with participants, which was fantastic. So we were looking at about 23 participants across the 7 councils that do participate in it. So we're really looking forward to this year, but it just wasn't the right thing to do to go ahead. So all of those participants, though, will be invited back next year.
And I have mentored 2 people on the program, neither of whom were members of staff. So that I mentor people from other councils. And it's really fun. Cool. And performance management, upskilling of managers. This is something we'll be doing with our management team. We unfortunately haven't been able to have basically wider management team meetings because we normally use there's a significant number of managers in the organisation, and under a COVID lockdown, theoretically the very worst thing we could have possibly done was have got them all in one room. For the obvious reasons that if a single person tested positive, catastrophic outcomes. So once we get to level 1, we will look to recommence on that. The focus on performance management. So performance management is basically how you manage poor performance. So it's a particular set of skills we need our managers to have. It'd be fair to say, from a cultural point of view, New Zealanders are not strong on performance management naturally. We don't particularly like potential conflict situations, and so we've basically got some very good coaching that teaches people how to do it. It's something we do on a regular basis, but it's something we need to keep doing. I would note that my general managers are actually very good at it and enjoy a reputation as being quite comfortable with dealing with performance issues of different kind. And there are in fact catchphrases for different general managers about how they deal with those. For example, you don't want to go on a trip to the BNZ with Hamish, as an example.
Is that story related?
I was like, that was just clickbait, actually.
That's right, yeah. It's called a teaser. Cool. We are currently restructuring the utilities part of infrastructure, and that was briefly on hold during the COVID-19 lockdown. That's still in consultation, but it is an area we were looking to both improve the performance, but also reflecting some of the very large projects we have in that space and need to reconfigure the team. And that will finalise early next week.
The 15th of June, that will be effective from.
Cool. Thanks, Hamish. You'll be aware we have restructured our communications function, and Brent has GM Community and Strategy has talked to you about that. The driver behind it is we operate in a very different world now in terms of media. There was a time when council essentially dealt with newsprint, so we used to publish, public notices and write columns and that sort of thing. A really good example of the change was during, lockdown levels 3 and 4, when there was no community newspaper being published. So suddenly that channel disappeared. So we've recognised that we need basically someone who looks after marketing and community engagement, and because there are a whole lot more channels, social media and other things, and that's got to be linked with our key strategic drives. And so we are busy recruiting a communications manager who that recruitment has been successful. It will be announced shortly, and we're currently in the process of recruiting the marketing and community engagement manager. And applications for that position close on Sunday. So that will roll out. Sustainable procurement. That is something of quite a lot of interest and discussion. That's been delayed due to COVID-19, but it's something we're going to put on the agenda for auditing risk. We have looked at procurement policy. It is essentially looking at the way you procure and going beyond a sort of services versus cost model to look at what are the community benefits. Are there, local, the benefits of using a local provider, and MV has done quite a lot of work in this space. I did note with some irony that recently high-profile procurement MV has gone through in terms of disability services, where they chose to go with a US provider rather than a local consortium. And I did, the slightly cynical bit in me went, if that was ever an example of a missed opportunity under a sustainable and local procurement policy, that would appear to be it. But, so that at least tells us that this can be quite a hard space to work in, because ultimately you may have to pay extra to get local procurement. So it becomes an interesting question. Jarvis automation, this is an ongoing process. So Jarvis is our intranet, and as we have automated quite a lot of processes. My favourite one is the one that deals with credit cards. The reason why that is my favourite is that our team developed quite a nice, efficient system. So you can literally take photos of your receipts, upload them into Jarvis, fill out the codes, and then it goes to your manager, and they see all the transactions, they can look at the receipts, they can see the notes, and they can prove it all entirely in our intranet. Why am I so excited about that? Because the previous organisation I worked for had a system that was a commercial system that did the same job, not as well, and that cost us $26,000 a year to lease the software for that system. We did have roughly 150 credit cards we were managing. So, and one of the new systems the team is working on at the moment, as you'll be familiar in the 10-year plan, one of the things we have to do is review all our levels of service. That is being done by an automated process on Jarvis. And our aim is to systematically get more and more of our routine processes into Jarvis. And we are hoping that for the KPIs for the organisation for next financial year, that process will also be automated. So that's quite exciting.
Councillor G. Taylor.
So is Jarvis something you log into, or is it just on the staff computers already?
So it's our intranet. So if you click on a web browser, the default page it opens is our intranet on all staff computers, and you don't have to separately log into it because our IT team, when you log into your computer, it transfers that information through to the login to Jarvis, give you permission, and you can log into Jarvis from anywhere on earth. It's a remote access system. So it is included in Jarvis is our document management system. So, for example, Ellie has all the documents ever associated with governance sit in a space in Jarvis.
So it's got a cloud in it as well.
It's at the moment it's server-based rather than cloud-based. So our computer servers, which sit in the air-conditioned room in the building, hold all that information, backed up on a daily basis, and those backups stored remotely. And on a weekly basis, they're sent to another set of servers. So, but yeah, it's our key IT resource for staff. It has things like for common things you want to do in the organisation, how you do them. So it's got a sort of accounting. It's got our document management system. It's also our announcements. So both important, like the next council meeting is how you think it. And we also have like a staff section where people can say, I've got some eggs for sale, or I'm trying to buy some hay bales or something like that. So,
Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you. Slight sideways step, Richard, but I'm interested, obviously, talking we've got the digital strategy coming back, which I'm really looking forward to, and there's a whole lot of improvement internally in terms of digital service efficiencies. Are there any plans from an elected member and governance perspective? Note, not looking at anybody in particular, but nearly the whole council were operating digitally last week at our council meeting. Sorry, Michael, I couldn't resist.
You go, girl.
But and in fact, as a team, we've had to adjust into that just as everybody else has over the last couple of months. I guess thinking, strike while the iron is hot. Are there improvements in the
absolutely. So, one of the projects Ellie and Shane have been working on is basically the digital services we provide councillors. As you absolutely correctly point out, the COVID-19 lockdown has jumped. I've heard it suggested that basically for most organisations, and ours included, we made 2 years of progress in 2 weeks. Yeah. We went from the ability to have 25 or 30 people working remotely to having 170, 180 people working remotely. And I've mentioned before, we had 2 servers dedicated to remote access, we have 14. So it was a massive amount of progress in days. And as you say, council meetings have changed dramatically because everyone is bringing, it's a bit like a school with BYOD, bring your own device. And so we need to play catch up on what is the best way we can provide that. We can still print things out, that's fine. And so it's going to be, you know, we want to find a happy process so that we experience.
Councillor Casey.
Thank you. I think if I could make a comment through the chief executive, I think it's the little things like being able to go on as a district councillor and pull up, for example, the skate park plans to show, or you know, when it's released, the Kowhai Park plans and things like that. I think it's that, from my point of view, it's the access to those little pieces of information that actually really enhance what I can do. Yeah. Rather than with respect having to go to the manager related and go, hey, can I please have, you know what I mean? It's just,
So one of the simple things we've done in response to your feedback is we're trying to get presentations on the portal in advance.
Very appreciated.
And that's an extra discipline for our staff, which is good. But we're actually, it's been really nice because, you know, one of my philosophies around change is you try something, see how it works. And then if you need to, you change again. Well, this is a clear example. We tried something and it worked because you were A, much happier, B, the level of discussion we could have was different because people had looked at the presentations in advance. So it's a really good example of that.
Councillor Belsky.
Just while we're on the subject of being pushed into this computer era, where are we up to in providing computers or iPads for our councillors? We were discussing it, weren't we? I just bring it up there because I'm on this and we're all on different things. And new to me, but I just thought we did have some plan.
I think that's one of the open questions for councillors is, do you want us to supply us a device, or would you prefer to use your own devices and us supply something that is device agnostic? And there are pros and cons with both, but it's something we can go through in a future workshop. My observation would be that most councillors are bringing their own devices, and the question for you is that what you want to do?
I just wasn't sure because I know Hillary was doing it, looking into it, weren't you, at one stage?
I may have thrown a small teensy at one point. No, I was just provoking the conversation about moving, you know, towards a more digital and working environment. But I don't think that I know it was certainly being explored, but I don't. That was part of my question today, as well as what's happening in that space.
Oh, no, that's good. I've just been wondering where it was at.
Councillors, we're going to take a very short 2-minute comfort break.
Because Michael needs to.
Fair enough. We're still
Very much.
Right. From Councillor Mark, service delivery, tighter integration of AMPS with the overarching vision of district result in additional service delivery efficiency and monetary benefits. So that is a key focus for us around the technical plan process and closer management of shared services with RDC. That's on hold. It's been delayed due to COVID-19. Our other challenge in around the shared services with DC is Hamish and I have had to allow the new chief executive and RDC time to get up to speed and get his head around. But it is something we're keen to discuss with them in terms of how we progress forward.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Richard, for that. Just comments on the document as a whole. When I first read it, referring back to the outline for it, which was to look for improvement, efficiencies and savings. I thought, yeah, well, it's a great list of improvements. It doesn't really provide the efficiencies and savings, but actually gone through it, I think it does. In certain areas, and I guess what I was looking for was things like efficiency, doing things with the least waste of time and effort. And there's elements there like Jarvis and that which should allow that to happen. Looking for competency and performance from our people, and I think you addressed that. One thing maybe that may not be there is accomplishing a job with minimum time and effort. Now we're having great difficulty getting jobs done efficiently from a time point of view, so that may be something to look at, just to get those jobs through quicker. Looking for efficiencies through technology and automation. We talked about that with Jarvis and various automation things, so that's good. So yeah, again, I think it's on the right track.
Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I took some confidence out of it too. I mean, the opening comment around the annual report, etc., through Councillor Mark, and the fact that it seemed to be devoid of the information that we thought the council might give us, and that their report was only 12 pages. Having said that, 50% of the things on our improvement plan have actually come out of that council mark program. So I think that gives it some strength and some capability within that.
Councillor Shaw.
In the area of improvements, what progress are we making in the engagement?
That's probably best expressed by a principal advisor, but I will do my best to sum up that. The COVID-19 lockdown of emergency has seen quite a significant change in iwi engagement. Rebecca, Brent, and Ra and myself met to specifically discuss iwi engagement. And Ra talked about how basically the crisis around COVID-19, and in particular iwi's concern driven by verbal and historical memory of other pandemics and the disproportionate impact they had on our Māori population, led to a significant change in their engagement approach. So we have now a much more engaged iwi group with council, in part because council was dealing with some really immediate needs in terms of hygiene products, food, flu vaccines, and things like that, but also because iwi responded by recognising that traditional mechanisms for engagement we're not efficient enough to deal with an event like COVID-19. So they needed a more efficient way of essentially going from individuals to whānau to hapu to iwi. The sort of more traditional cascade model just wasn't efficient enough, so they've worked out more efficient networking. So I think potentially we will see a dramatic improvement in our engagement come about as a result because of our commitment to iwi engagement through the COVID-19 process and our commitment to meeting the needs of our community in COVID-19.
Right, any other questions, comments, requests? Councillor G. Taylor?
I do have one. I'm just trying to find the email that you sent celebrating your time here at NPC anniversary. And I did note that, just further to Alison's comment, that you are really proud of what you've done in terms of our Māori culture within council. And I did think that it sounds like, obviously I don't know what it was like before joining council, but I think you've done a great job in that space, Richard, so well done to you.
And acknowledge your really good time.
I find it really hard, I've got to admit. I wish I had the linguistic talents of some of my colleagues. I'm looking at Francis.
Yeah, some people could just pick it up really easy.
So you should.
Right, well, I think, thank you, Richard, for this improvement plan, which takes into account efficiencies and savings. I think we're all really pleased to see it. It's been a little bit of a comedy of errors that's taken so long to get here, but we're not blaming you. The important thing is we've got something to work on. Hopefully you might just take on board those other little comments that we've added on the way through, particularly around the efficiencies and savings. But I think, councillors, are we pretty comfortable that we've got a plan to work to, or are there some other things missing that you'd like added? Councillor Humphrey, then Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Look, I guess just picking up, very comfortable. My query when I read this document in terms of the evaluation system in place for elected members was the timeframe of that not needing to be in place basically until the end of this training. And I personally don't think that's particularly helpful in being able to track any level of improvement or progress of ourselves as a governing team. If we don't evaluate until the end of the training, I would much rather see that. And I just wanted to endorse your comments about picking that up in the coming financial year, because I think you have to have a benchmark in the state of play to then be able to look back in 22 and go, oh, am I any better at my job?
Yes, yeah, no, I completely agree.
That's for sure.
I just wanted to reinforce the need for an update with the shared services with the district. I appreciate they've got a new chief executive. It's quite a significant part of our business, and it's important for us to keep an eye on what's happening in that space, particularly around the value for dollar. I mean, we don't want to find ourselves in a position where we're giving them such a good deal that we're carrying them. We need to make sure that it's a fair arrangement.
I agree. I think at the moment, one of the concerns Hamish and I share is that in RDC are getting a very, very good deal.
Right, we have a recommendation on page 12.
Yes, Councillor Casey, yeah. That the Penalty District Council Improvement Plan set out in Appendix 1 to the Board of Chief Executive dated 2020, and that we approved the areas identified for improvement, including efficiency and savings.
Thank you. We have a second up. Campbell. Any discussion? In favour of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Contrary. Carried. Thank you, Richard, and thank you to the executive team who I believe have worked with you in has to comply with this. So thank you for that. Brings us to the matter of your contract, and I think everybody's aware that Richards has just celebrated his 4th anniversary at Manawatu District Council a few weeks ago, and we'll leave you to introduce the like to talk to.
Just wait while Ellie pulls the presentation up. This is, yeah, a conversation about my employment. I'm going to talk to you about key dates, what options the council has. I want to know, I'll give you my preference and opportunity for any questions. Just a note there, I've used rather than first person because I did think I could do the one option is to do the presentation talking about the chief executive, but that frankly just seems weird. So I've got me or I. Okay, so key dates. I started working for the council on the 9th of May 2016. My 4th year anniversary was on the 8th of May 2020. And my contract with council ends on the 8th of May 2021. For those of you not familiar with it, council chief executives have slightly unusual employment contracts in that our employment contracts are specified in the Local Government Act. And it's specified that council chief executive, A, you've got to have one, B, you can employ one for up to 5 years, and then at the end of that 5-year period, they can be extended for 2 years, but then they must be re-advertised. So they're very different from any other chief executive's employment contract. Normally, chief executives are employed for a period, be it 3 years or 5 years. But then if the board that has the chief executive is happy with their performance, they can just roll it over. Council contracts are different because they're specified in statute. So, council can commence a recruitment process prior to May 2021. You would typically engage a consultant to do this. Council has done it in the past. And the process should be completed prior to the 8th of May 2021, ideally. Otherwise, you will need to appoint an acting chief executive or something like that. Alternatively, council can extend my contract for 2 years. Now, this can be done at any time prior to the end of the contract, and it would extend my contract to the 8th of May 2023. At that time, council is required to advertise the position. So prior to the 8th of May 2023, you need to go through an advertising process, and you can reappoint the same chief executive. And there are some chief executives who their record's about 31 years in local government. I'm not going to make that. Yeah, exactly.
And talk to you on the third party.
Yeah, exactly, yes, quite possibly. Chief executives and GMs typically have up, so these are just points to note, typically have up to 3 month notice periods. Chief executive recruitment processes take time, so if council were to recruit next year, it would be wise to start the process prior to Christmas. You don't have to, but basically you normally have a dead space through all of January and February. And from my perspective, it can take 9 to 24 months to secure a chief executive position. Doing well if you can find one in 9 months. Sometimes it could take 2 years. Depends what the employment market is doing and how lucky you are. So, my preference. I would like council to extend my contract. It's notable that this isn't an automatic choice for chief executives. David Clapperton of Horowhenua reached the end of his 5 years and requested that council re-advertise his position. And he was reappointed for 5 years. And I'm sure we're all aware of the reasons why he did that. Clive Manley at Ruapehu is currently in the process of applying for his job. And again, that was after 5 years rather than 2. And Kim Fell, his contract was extended for a further 2 years after his 3rd year at Whanganui. So he went from 5 to 7 after 3 years. I have a preference that council should make that decision reasonably quickly. For 2 reasons. If council, well, the main reason is that if council were to advertise the position, and therefore my contract ends in 2021, I'll need to start looking for another job. I would also apply for this job, but there is no guarantee that I would get it, as evidenced by Rangitikei, where the incumbent reapplied and was widely expected to get it, but didn't.
All your predecessors?
Yes, all my predecessors.
Councillor Belsky.
Just, you don't need to answer this question, but I've just, I see the CEO of Wellington Council's resigned. I was wondering if you had thought of opportunity to apply for that job.
That recruitment process has been completed and a new person confirmed, who was the Chief Operating Officer. Barbara McHero is now the Chief Executive.
Was that 6 months ago?
Yes.
Might be an old that.
Right. Next page is questions.
Look, really appreciate the frankness of this conversation. I guess very easy to see in the current economic climate that job security is highly attractive. I guess the question from me is, beyond the certainty of a job and income and all that nice box to all stuff, why do you want to stay for 2 years, and what is it that you hope to achieve in that time?
So good practice for an interview question.
Well, you know.
So I've been with council for 4 years, and I've really enjoyed those 4 years. So one of my key reasons for applying for an extension is I enjoy the job I do. I get a lot of satisfaction from it, and I feel I've grown and developed as both professionally and personally as a result. In terms of what do I want to achieve, looking forward, I think we probably face the most challenging 3 years the council will have faced, certainly in my time in council. You know, COVID-19 is going to have a massive economic impact on our community, and council is going to have to navigate a series of very difficult challenges. And I think because of the time I've had in council, my experience, but also the culture we've built in terms of the organisation and the kind of team MDC approach, I think I can do a good job in helping council navigate some really difficult decisions, and that we can continue to improve and grow and develop in that time.
So the way I see it at the moment is that we would possibly, if Richard hadn't made this request for us to address this issue sooner rather than later, we may have left it to the annual review a little bit later in the year. But given that Richard would like this addressed in the sooner rather than later, I've tentatively set up a system with our consultant Pamela Peters, where we will go through an assessment process like our returning councillors will be familiar with. And we're looking at a time frame of June, July. Francis, have you got anything to update us on that?
No, but they're the same reason.
Yep. So that we can, effectively, it would be an assessment of Richard's performance over 4 years, 4 and a bit years, and then for us to come to a decision about whether we offer a 2-year extension or not. And so I guess what we're asking for today is, are you comfortable that we do that basically next month, June? I've got it tentatively penciled in, this will happen, but it's up to council to say, are you comfortable? That's a good process to go through. That is the process that Pamela has recommended. And then so we go through that, we make our decision, and then when we get to the review of the full year, we won't be using Pamela Peters, or the plan is that we don't use Pamela again, so we use it once rather than twice in the year. But we actually use it as a special process, which leads up to our decision on whether or not we offer Richard the 2-year extension. Councillor Kim?
I was just thinking, we've gone through over time, last year's reasonably comprehensive review, process like this, and with Pamela. Just on this, I was wondering if we do need that external advice. I mean, it comes down to our decision whether or not we want to advertise the role or not. So, just wondering if we need that external advice for that. But
it's also the assessment process that she takes us through. Councillor Humphrey?
I was just going to say, I do think it's valuable. I think there's a rigour and a discipline in going through that process. We are legally an employing body, and I think it just helps and safeguard both Richard and ourselves that we've been able to demonstrate that we've thought through really clearly and qualify the basis of our decision making. I'm extremely grateful to you for raising the suggestion. Otherwise, we could have actually been in the embarrassing position of deciding potentially, hypothetically, not to extend a contract and running out of time to advertise the contract. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Councillor Casson?
Thank you, Chair. I think that acknowledging what my fellow colleagues are saying, I think it's probably for me the actual understanding of the process, of having the actual usual mechanism of the process explained, as opposed to we're going to go and do a process through that. So at what point will we go through the sort of the details and the mechanics of that process prior to actually sitting down?
The discussions I've had with Pamela will be a very similar assessment process to what we've done previously, where we all do our assessment, got our questionnaires, etc., send back anonymously to Pamela, who collates them, and then she comes in and basically presents the findings to us. But as opposed to being an assessment of 1 year, an assessment of 4 years, with the goal of the exercise being to come to a decision about whether we go out to the market after the 5 years or we offer Richard a 2-year extension, which has quite a specific purpose. And I guess, as we've done the last couple of years with Pamela, she would take a very similar approach to the last 2 years. Councillor Belsky?
I agree with Hilary. I think we should go through the procedure as being accountable to our ratepayers and their money, and I think it's a good idea. I hate the questions, to tell you the truth. I hate answering them. I'd rather not, but that's the way it works, and so I would agree that we have.
Any other?
I choose support using the process with Pamela. I think it's the most important decision we make as a council. It's important to the executive. And it needs to be a robust and transparent process, as others have mentioned. I know Stuart's looking for savings, but actually, I'm sure it won't be in our case, but there's the potential for it to be more costly and but I'm sure it won't be. If you know what I mean.
In terms of the savings, it there should be very little in it because we were looking to engage Pamela at the end of the year anyway, in which, in this case, if we go down this track, we won't be engaging her at the end of the year. We'll be using her services for the 4-year assessment. Yeah, so we're not looking at an extra spend. All right, well, on that basis, we'll proceed with engaging Pamela. I'll liaise with Francis and Pamela in that regard, and we will address your request as soon as we can, Richard. Yes, through that process.
Mr. Chairman, given that you've just made a decision, should there be a motion? Given the fact that we are still in a public meeting, not a workshop.
Happy to do it that way.
Your guidance on that, Kelly. That'd be good. You happy to move that?
With the wording?
Council engaged members to assist with the contract renewal of the chief executive
And assessment process.
Yeah.
Should be named new business.
Via LG.
Okay, I'll be guided by Francis on that.
Be named in the equivalent.
Councillor Humphrey.
I was just going to suggest perhaps some appropriate wording could be the council notes the chief executive's presentation and will be undertaking a review of the contract immediately in the short term.
And due process.
Forthwith.
Thank you, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Humphrey. I'm very happy to move that motion. Is there a seconder?
I'll see that.
Councillor Marsh, thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, just the reasoning around that too is that, and I'll take Councillor Campbell's comments on board too, and I was thinking along the same lines when we've only done an assessment about five months ago. But I think it is worthwhile. But from my point of view, I think that the main concern for me is to speed that process so that we can get some consistency and let the council know, council employees know, that they've got some consistency of leadership out there as we can have. If we were to throw a curveball, then the uncertainty from the employees' point of view could just distract them from the business at hand, and when the pressure will be on.
Marsh, any further discussion? Motion, those in favour, please say aye. Aye. The contrary, carried. Thank you. And sorry, Your Worship, we haven't been able to see you on screen, so hopefully you haven't been champing at the bit to.
I think she's gone, like, out of the room.
Right.
Just need more paint.
Well, that brings us to the end of our consideration of late items. Close the meeting. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Thank you. We'll reconvene very soon.